A child who is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. What is an example of this that you've seen or experienced firsthand? I once attended a birthday party with a bouncy castle. The birthday kid and their friends kicked the younger sibling and his friend out, so they unplugged it and watched everyone's dismay as it deflated. Way to go, Mason. Badass moves for a 12-year-old. Good lord, if Mason is 12, what kind of older siblings teenagers are renting a birthday bouncy castle? Is that the cool thing these days with the local youths? Hell yes, bouncy castles are the shit. I'm upset I'm too old to get in them. You're never too old. Tell that to my knees, P. And my lower back. I work with kids who have mental health issues. Many of them have attempted suicide, ran away, self-harm, or have an addiction of some kind by their mid-teens. They always have some kind of traumatic family life that's pushed them to that problem. One thing we see again and again is the poor kid who comes in after the parent guardian has belittled them and told them what a piece of garbage they are for years. Eventually the kid starts acting out, which the adult uses as proof that he/she was right all along about the kid being an awful piece of shit. One kid I worked with was in and out of treatment programs for a couple of years and had exactly this kind of parents. Father was always on the road driving a truck and checked out when he was at home. Mom was personality disordered and extremely emotionally and verbally abusive. One day, while his father was on the road, this boy murdered his mother by bludgeoning her to death with a hammer while she slept in. Then he kept her body in the house for a few days, abusing the corpse before stuffing her remains into the trash can and leaving them on the curbside for pickup. Saw this happen with my lit brother. He has autism, and even though he was diagnosed around the age of 8, a lot of people didn't know how to deal with him, or didn't want to take the effort to learn how to deal with him. This includes teachers, other children's parents, and even one of our grandmothers. What made it even worse is that I was the child prodigy who would get nothing but amazing grades and started getting into art at a very young age and being really good at it. I got all the praise had he basically got nothing. My parents didn't do this on purpose, I would steal the spotlight. So he just started getting in trouble just so he would get any attention. He started fires, vandalized stuff, and even from a young age he would go to the main road to throw rocks at cars and such. If he didn't get caught, he would tell my parents what he did himself. There's actually a video of him at my birthday where he told our mom he wanted to show her something, only to flip over a very large container of laundry detergent when she arrived with the camera. He's 25 now, and thankfully he has a really nice girlfriend that actually helps him get over the whole negative attention is also attention thing. I was in basically the same situation, except the constant expectations from my parents were a problem for me. I ended up dealing with depression, but I still always tried to behave like a responsible adult and care for and believe in my autistic little brother in a way that my parents never quite did for me. He ended up having really good grades and a successful job, and a remarkable air of competency that I never truly had, and by the time he graduated high school he was the responsible one with a solid future and I was the screw-up. He once told me that even if I was a bit useless, I was more of a father to him than our actual dad ever was, and I couldn't be more proud of him. You're a literal saint, bud. Keep being an awesome person. If you raised him to be successful, I'd imagine you have some incredible potential inside you too. Kid went to school. He was in special behavioral classes, and then was put into our class in 4th grade. My teacher was hard on him. One day, the kid had a tantrum and threw a chair. He was sent back to the special classes, which probably destroyed him. He continued on and in high school was one of the freaks. Always wore a trench coat. In Texas, mind you, was into nerdy things. I talked to him sometimes, but wouldn't really call him a friend, more just nice to him. He would be reading an ad book and we'd chat about that. Being my uncle got me into RPGs. In 11th grade, school went into lockdown for some unknown reason. Found out he committed suicide in one of the school bathrooms. Heard he wrote letters to faculty and friends prior to doing it. I did this to my last job as a rehab tech in a nursing home. I was treated poorly after a couple of months. My workload was literally doubled and I was never listened to about my concerns. I begged them to hire a second tech, even part-time, just so I can breathe and have my mental state not be ruined. They always told me no and then piled on more work. Got mad at me when patients weren't complying, ran me around like a dog for hours, cut my lunch hour for no reason, and refused to give me any sort of pay raise when minimum wage went up. I was at my wit's end, and everyone but my manager and the therapist could see it. I also experienced a privacy violation that I wish I reported to our. I was basically forced to tell my manager why I needed to take a day off and for what the medical procedure I was getting was for. Another instance, I was told I was clearly gaining weight by one of the therapists and my manager, and then they laughed about it. I was so pissed off that I put in my 2 weeks, but I could barely make it past 2 more days. After one god-awful busy morning, I packed up my stuff during my break, clocked out, and went home. I sent a text to my manager saying I won't be coming back and I blocked her. I felt bad doing it, but I had nurses and aides telling me to quit BC. They saw how miserable I was. About a week or so later they went into lockdown BC of COVID. You didn't burn it down. You left for your own mental health. You did the right thing. They begged me to stay when I put in my 2 weeks. I feel like I kind of did. But since that day I have left so much better. They burned their own shit down. You told them about the fire and they laughed at you. You know by the way they treated you that your well-being was not something they cared about. They didn't earn 2 days' notice, much less 2 weeks. You don't owe them anything. Only thing I can thank them for was the sweet resume experience. Because of that damn job I can't see a friggin' wheelchair without seizing. My brother, my family wasn't loving. I coped it with my venturing out and exploring on my own. I would leaving early each day and explore nature, only coming home for food. My brother coped with the lack of love with sex, drugs, fighting, parties, and theft. He had a super distorted view of needing love and he really acted like if he wasn't getting love, then the world deserved to burn. He went into prison in his teens. He got out in his 20s, tried to be good for a year, but couldn't find his concept of love, so he started burning the village again, went back in. Got out years later, tried to go clean and this time found love. But he pushed himself too hard to be lovable. He developed a super personality built on meth. He did drugs to keep up, lost his love, and started to burn the village down again. The last time, the local sheriffs ended the cycle. He wasn't going back in. During the road chase, they filled his windshield with bullets and he veered off a cliff and died in the dirt. It was the headline of the local news. I think I may forever compare my life to my brother's. How could we be so different? We had the same parents and endured very similar pains. But I didn't choose to burn down the village. I chose to distance myself and survive. He went nuclear, the village didn't have a chance. I'm sorry that happened to you both. I'm a behavioral interventionist at a middle school. My job is technically to pull disruptive students out of class, get them redirected, then back into their classroom. Most of my job is actually a sounding board and an understanding ear to kids who struggle. My entire job is an example of that. The neglect and abuse of some of those kids will break your heart. So much respect for this role. All the very best with it. I am burning down my community right now. That is, my neighbors are ducking with me, trying to weaponize the bylaws of our HOA to construct a spiteful road on my property for their driveway, fire safety they call it. $25,000 in unnecessary legal expenses, I call it. So I let my HOA know that if they allow this, don't stand up forcefully for me in court, then I will use that same power to demand a 60 road down the entire HOA, literally forcing neighbors I don't know to move their homes. I am being treated poorly, feel unwelcome in my new village, so I am enforcing my rights and burning down the neighborhood. It will cost 25 landowners $1 million to make up for fucking with me. Some may literally lose their homes, and afterwards their property values will be much lower. But I told them what would happen if they did not support me, gave them a chance. How would that work exactly? How could you enforce, or they enforce a new road? That's crazy. I don't understand how any of that works. The more serious answer is, contracts. HOAs often make you sign them and the fine print will get you. Any contract you sign needs to be read thoroughly or you'll end up in situations like ops. It sucks and a good lawyer can protect you, also like op, so it's not the end of the world if you get tricked. But still, always read the contract, guys. I once looked at a house in a neighborhood that had a HOA whose bylaws were a 700-page book. The realtor promised me that it was a loose HOA that mostly deals with common areas, but to me a 700-page book says otherwise. I looked at the house because my wife wanted a stable neighborhood, but that made me nope out of there no matter how nice that house was. We now live on a few acres outside of a neighborhood. Freedom. 700 pages? You definitely dodged a bullet. Read some of the nightmare stories on Reddit HOA if you'd like validation.